Jack stepped off the transport shuttle onto the rough surface of the mining colony. Dusty winds swept across the jagged plains, carrying a metallic smell that clung to everything. The colony was lawless, built from crude metal structures and half-finished machinery. The settlers moved like shadows, wary of strangers, their faces hardened by years of survival. He adjusted the strap of his gear and scanned the area. Rumors had brought him here a story about a mysterious alien woman who ran the colony from the shadows. People whispered about her beauty, her intelligence, and her absolute control over everyone around her. Jack, who had never been shy about his confidence, immediately assumed she must be weak in some way. All it takes is a little pressure, he muttered to himself. I can dominate her, take control, and make this colony mine. Jack moved through the settlement, observing everything. Children darted between the metal buildings, carrying small loads of ore, while workers repaired machinery that constantly broke under the harsh conditions. He saw the settlers' eyes flick to him, curious but cautious. He gave them a smile that was meant to be reassuring but was mostly intimidating. No one approached him, which only confirmed his assumption that the colony was tightly controlled by someone powerful. He finally reached the canyon where the woman was said to operate. The area was almost silent, save for the faint hum of machines deep in the rock. A small group of miners was unloading supplies, and in the middle of it all stood Lyra. She was nothing like he expected. She was slender and elegant, with skin that shimmered slightly under the harsh light. But there was a strength in her posture, a calm authority that made her seem untouchable. Her eyes scanned the area with sharp precision, noting every detail as if she could see through walls. Jack approached, letting his confidence show in every step. You must be Lyra, he said, his tone bold and commanding. I hear you run this place. I'm here to help, or maybe to take over if you're not careful. Lyra turned slowly to face him. There was no fear in her expression, no surprise, only curiosity. And who are you? She asked, her voice smooth but firm. A human who thinks he can control what he does not understand? Jack chuckled. Something like that. I know how to get things done, how to make people listen. You just need someone who knows how to handle a colony like this. Lyra raised an eyebrow, the smallest of gestures. But it spoke volumes. She stepped closer, and Jack noticed how calm she was, how much control she had over herself and the environment. You think strength comes from threats? She said quietly. It does not. Strength comes from understanding, from seeing the whole picture, from knowing that every action has a consequence. Jack felt a flicker of unease, but he brushed it off. All the more reason you need me, he said with a grin. I get results. People respect results. Lyra tilted her head slightly. Respect is not forced, human. It is earned. And fear is a weak foundation for anything lasting. Jack frowned, realizing her words carried more weight than he expected. Still, he was determined. He would stay, watch her, and find a way to assert his dominance. He wasn't used to being challenged. He thrived on being in control, and so far, this alien woman had thrown him off balance. He spent the next few hours observing her. Lyra directed the miners with subtle gestures, no yelling or commands, yet every worker moved as if she had whispered instructions directly into their minds. She inspected machinery with sharp precision, fixing errors without touching tools that would seem necessary to anyone else. Jack realized she had knowledge far beyond his expectations, knowledge that could not be learned in a lifetime. Despite this, he was determined. He found a small corner of the colony to set up camp. From there, he could watch her, gather information, and plan. He didn't trust anyone around her. They all seemed loyal to her in a way that bordered on reverence. That meant he had to be smart, patient, and subtle. His plan had to be perfect. As night fell, the colony changed. Lights flickered from the metal buildings, casting long shadows across the jagged rocks. The workers returned to their quarters. But Lyra stayed outside. She stood at the edge of the canyon, looking at the stars above. Jack watched her from his vantage point, a mixture of frustration and admiration growing inside him. He couldn't deny that she was extraordinary, and for the first time in years, someone had caught his attention in a way that challenged him. He had thought he could dominate her with sheer force and confidence, but her calm intelligence was like a shield against his usual tactics. The night was quiet except for the occasional gust of wind. Jack thought about his next move. He could confront her directly, but that might be too dangerous. She was clearly not someone who would be intimidated easily. He could try to manipulate the settlers, turn them against her, but that would take time and careful planning. Or he could wait. Observe more. Learn her patterns. Her weaknesses, if any existed. Every time he thought he saw a weakness, she adjusted, corrected, or prevented it before he could act. It was both maddening and fascinating. By morning, Jack had decided. He would stay close to her, offer help, while secretly learning everything he could. He would find a way to assert himself when the moment was right. It was a game now, and he was determined to win. As the sun rose over the canyon, Lyra began inspecting the mining equipment again. Jack watched her closely. Every movement she made was precise, controlled, and efficient. He noticed the respect the miners had for her, the way they looked to her for guidance, the way they followed her without hesitation. Jack realized that if he wanted to dominate this woman, he couldn't rely on threats or force. He would need something more, something clever, something unexpected. The realization humbled him slightly, but it also excited him. He loved a challenge. The first day passed with Jack learning more about the colony and its operations. He interacted with some of the settlers, offering to help with small tasks. He noticed that they were polite, but distant, always keeping a small measure of loyalty to Lyra. It confirmed what he already suspected: she was not just a leader. She was a figure of inspiration. That evening, Jack approached her again, this time with a question designed to learn more about her motivations. "Why do they follow you so willingly?" he asked. "What makes them trust you so completely?" Lyra looked at him, her eyes reflecting the last rays of the sun. "Because they know I do not act for myself. I act for the colony, for everyone who lives here. Power is not about fear, it is about responsibility. People follow those who are responsible, those who care for more than just themselves." Jack nodded, realizing that no matter what he had planned, he would have to adjust. This was not a colony where a brute human approach would succeed. If he wanted to play the game, he would need strategy, patience, and intelligence, things he had relied on, but never at this scale. He left her then, giving the impression of retreat. But in reality, he was planning. The canyon was quiet again, the hum of machinery and the occasional call of a distant creature the only sounds. Jack lay down, thinking about the woman who had disrupted his confidence and forced him to reconsider everything he thought he knew about power and control. As he drifted off to sleep under the alien sky, he knew one thing for certain. This was going to be a battle of wits, not strength. And somehow, he felt the thrill of a challenge he could not yet win. The alien woman had set the rules without even speaking, and Jack was determined to play, and eventually, to dominate. But deep down, he couldn't shake the feeling that she might already be a step ahead of him. Watching, calculating, waiting for him to make the first mistake. Jack spent the next morning quietly observing Lyra at work. She moved through the mining colony with the precision of someone who knew every detail of its operations. Every miner, every machine, every shipment was under her careful watch. Yet she gave no orders loudly. She spoke softly when necessary, gestured subtly, and always seemed 3 steps ahead of everyone else. Jack's plan to dominate her now felt even more impossible. Every instinct he had about control, power, and intimidation seemed useless against her calm intelligence. He realized that brute strength would not work, and subtle manipulation was far harder than he expected, but he was determined. He had never backed down from a challenge before, and he would not start now. He began integrating himself into daily operations. At first, he offered help with small tasks, carrying supplies, repairing machinery, and assisting miners with complex equipment. The settlers accepted his help politely but remained cautious. Jack noticed their loyalty to Lyra was unshakable. They looked to her for approval, hesitated to act without her guidance, and subtly avoided his influence. Jack knew he had to change his approach. Instead of trying to dominate her immediately, he would learn, adapt, and wait for an opening. He needed to understand her strategies, her patterns, and maybe even her weaknesses. For the first time in his life, patience became a weapon more powerful than his usual confidence or aggression. Later that day, he found himself accompanying Lyra on a routine inspection of the mining equipment. She moved with grace and focus, checking machinery, analyzing energy readings, and making adjustments with tools that seemed ordinary but were applied with expert precision. Jack attempted to strike up a conversation, hoping to learn more about her motivations. "You seem to have this place running perfectly," he said, trying to sound casual. "How do you do it? How do you make people follow you so completely?" Lyra glanced at him without stopping her work. "People follow because they feel safe, because they see someone making decisions that protect everyone, not just themselves," she replied. "Leadership is not about fear or domination. It is about responsibility. That is why they trust me." Jack nodded slowly, though he still didn't fully understand. He had always relied on dominance and intimidation to get results. But with Lyra, that approach was clearly meaningless. She had something he had never seen before. An almost instinctive understanding of people and situations, combined with intelligence and calm authority. As they moved deeper into the mining area, an alarm suddenly sounded. Machines whirred, lights flickered, and the miners froze. Lyra's eyes narrowed, scanning the equipment. Jack followed her gaze, trying to understand what she was seeing. A rogue drone had malfunctioned and was heading toward the miners, its heavy drill spinning dangerously. The workers panicked, unsure of how to stop it. Jack's first instinct was to rush forward and try to take control, but Lyra was faster. She moved calmly, giving precise instructions to the workers. "Move left. Now. Shut down the main console." The miners obeyed instantly, guided by her calm commands. Lyra then approached the drone herself, using a small device to disable its drill and shut it down completely. The entire operation took less than a minute, and not a single worker was harmed. Jack stood there, stunned. He had tried to imagine a way to assert dominance over her, but she had just demonstrated a level of skill, intelligence, and leadership that completely outmatched him. For the first time, he realized that Lyra was not someone to be dominated. She was someone to be respected, maybe even feared, but in a way that demanded admiration rather than submission. After the incident, the settlers praised Lyra quietly, their voices full of relief and gratitude. Jack could see it clearly. They trusted her completely, not because of her appearance or rumors, but because she had earned it through action and intelligence. That night, Jack reflected on what had happened. He felt a strange mix of frustration and admiration. His plan to dominate her seemed impossible. Yet the challenge excited him. He realized that to succeed here, he could not rely on old methods. He needed to adapt, learn, and maybe even cooperate, though admitting that was difficult for him. The next day, a supply mission took Jack and Lyra to a dangerous canyon where new mining equipment had to be transported. The path was narrow, jagged, and filled with loose rocks. Any mistake could send equipment or even people plummeting into the depths below. Lyra walked ahead, guiding Jack and the workers with calm precision. She knew exactly where to step, where to place each piece of machinery, and how to adjust the balance of loads on the transport vehicles. Jack followed closely, trying to match her careful movements, but quickly realizing how inexperienced he was in comparison. Suddenly, a rock slide started further up the canyon. Debris and dust rushed down toward them, threatening to crush the workers and machinery. Jack froze, unsure of what to do. Lyra, however, reacted instantly. She shouted clear commands, directing everyone to safe spots, while simultaneously stabilizing the largest transport vehicle with a clever use of levers and counterweights. The rock slide passed, leaving behind only minor damage and shaken workers. Jack could hardly believe what he had just witnessed. Lyra had not only predicted the danger but had handled it with skill and calm that no human could easily match. Later, as they rested by a small water source, Jack finally spoke. "I have to admit," he said carefully, "I underestimated you. I thought I could, I don't know, maybe get control of this colony. But that's impossible." Lyra studied him, her expression unreadable. "Control is not given, it is earned. You are learning that now," she said. "If you want to survive here, you will need more than strength or arrogance. You will need understanding, intelligence, and cooperation. The human way of dominance alone will not work here." Jack felt a strange humility settling over him. He had always thought of himself as capable, as someone who could bend any situation to his will. But Lyra had shown him that human ingenuity alone could not triumph over careful intelligence, planning, and leadership. He realized that if he wanted to succeed here, he would need to use the very skills he had relied on in different ways: creativity, resourcefulness, and adaptability. Over the next few days, Jack began to assist Lyra genuinely, not out of a desire to dominate but out of necessity. He helped repair machinery, transported equipment, and even offered suggestions that improved efficiency. Lyra observed him, sometimes approving, sometimes correcting, but never belittling him. During one particularly dangerous transport, Jack's quick thinking saved a miner from falling equipment. Lyra watched silently, her eyes reflecting a mixture of surprise and approval. Jack realized that this was the first time he had contributed meaningfully, not just for his ego but for the safety and success of the colony. By the end of the week, Jack's respect for Lyra had grown considerably. He could no longer think of her as a target for domination. She was more than a leader, she was a strategist, a protector, and someone whose presence inspired loyalty and courage. The thought made him uneasy and intrigued at the same time. He had never met anyone like her, and he began to understand that the true challenge was not controlling her, but keeping up with her. One evening, as the sun set over the canyon, Jack and Lyra stood on a high ridge overlooking the colony. The workers moved like tiny figures below, machinery humming softly in the distance. Lyra's gaze was steady, focused on the horizon. Jack felt a rare sense of awe. "You know," he said quietly, "I used to think I knew everything about leadership, about control. But now, I see that I was wrong. There's more to strength than I realized." Lyra looked at him, her eyes reflecting the fading light. "Strength is not about forcing others to follow you. It is about understanding, anticipating, and guiding. Humans have creativity and courage, but you must learn to use them wisely." Jack nodded, feeling the weight of her words. He knew he still had much to learn, and the next challenge could come at any moment. But for the first time, he felt that he was part of something bigger than his ego or ambition. He was part of a colony, part of a team, and perhaps part of a plan that was far greater than he could imagine. That night, as he lay under the alien sky, Jack realized that the game he had intended to play, dominating Lyra, was no longer his goal. The challenge had changed. Now, it was about understanding, surviving, and maybe even earning the respect of the alien woman who had completely turned his world upside down. He drifted off to sleep with a mixture of frustration, excitement, and determination. He had entered the colony thinking he could dominate a mysterious alien woman. But now he faced a different truth. Lyra was not someone to control, she was someone to learn from, to match, and perhaps, one day, to stand alongside. And Jack was ready to rise to the challenge, no matter how difficult it might be. Jack had been working alongside Lyra for several weeks now. He no longer approached her with thoughts of domination. Instead, he observed, learned, and occasionally contributed to the colony's operations. His respect for her had grown immensely. Though he still felt the stirrings of his old ambition, a desire to prove himself in a world that seemed far beyond human limits. One morning, a message arrived through the colony's encrypted comm network. Lyra examined it carefully, her eyes narrowing as she read the encoded text. Jack watched her, curiosity burning. He wanted to know what kind of information could capture her attention so fully. Finally, she turned to him. "There is a situation," she said calmly. A fleet of rogue alien mercenaries has been detected nearby. Their target is not the colony itself, but the resources we are managing. They are dangerous, skilled, and unpredictable. Jack felt a shiver of unease. He had faced hostile groups before, but never at this scale. He glanced at Lyra, expecting her to show fear, hesitation, or doubt. There was none. Her face was calm, composed, and focused like she had already calculated a plan for every possible scenario. "Do we have any defenses?" Jack asked. Lyra nodded. "We do, but they are limited. We will need strategy, coordination, and precise execution to survive. That is why I am bringing you into this. Jack, your skills, your creativity, and your adaptability are valuable, but you must follow instructions carefully." Jack felt a mix of excitement and apprehension. He had been brought into the colony with the intent to dominate Lyra. Yet now she was trusting him with something far more important: life, safety, and survival. The realization humbled him, but it also ignited a determination he had never felt before. Over the next few hours, Lyra explained the colony's defensive strategies. She described the terrain, the machinery that could be used as traps, and the behavior of the mercenaries based on intercepted communications. Jack listened intently, noting every detail. He realized that Lyra's brilliance went beyond leadership. She was a strategist, a tactician, and an expert in anticipating enemy behavior. As they prepared for the arrival of the mercenaries, Jack had a chance to reflect on how much he had learned. He had come to the colony thinking he could dominate an alien woman with beauty and influence, only to discover that her intelligence, skill, and foresight made her far beyond his expectations. She had forced him to adapt, to think differently, and to respect the abilities of both the alien and his own species. When the first scouts of the mercenary fleet appeared, Jack and Lyra were ready. The rogue ships glinted in the distance, their engines emitting harsh mechanical hums. The settlers watched from the colony, tension visible on every face. Jack felt his heart race. This was no longer a test of ego, it was a test of survival, strategy, and trust. Lyra moved with precision, giving orders that were short, clear, and effective. Workers moved machinery into strategic positions, creating barriers and choke points. Automated drones took defensive positions, while traps were set along the rocky pathways. Jack worked alongside her, placing equipment and making quick decisions based on the situation. The first clash was sudden. The mercenary scouts descended upon the colony with speed and aggression, expecting an easy victory. Instead, they were met with a coordinated defense. Drones fired with precise timing, barriers blocked their advance, and traps caught them by surprise. Jack saw firsthand how Lyra's planning and the settlers' discipline made the colony far more formidable than it appeared. During the battle, a rogue mercenary team attempted to flank from a hidden canyon path. Jack noticed their movement and shouted a warning to Lyra. She nodded, and together they redirected the defensive strategy, using mobile machinery and quick thinking to block the attack. Jack's human unpredictability, something Lyra did not fully anticipate, proved invaluable. The mercenaries were momentarily confused, giving the colony a crucial advantage. After several hours of intense conflict, the mercenaries began to retreat. Their attack had been met with unexpected resistance, and their losses were significant. The colony had survived, and the settlers erupted in relief and quiet celebration. Jack, exhausted but exhilarated, looked at Lyra with newfound admiration. "You were incredible," he said, voice strained but sincere. "I've never seen anything like that. You predicted everything, coordinated everyone perfectly, and I can't believe we survived." Lyra's expression remained calm, though there was a hint of acknowledgement in her eyes. "We survived because we worked together. Strength alone does not win battles, Jack. Coordination, strategy, and trust do. You contributed in ways I could not anticipate, and that made the difference." Jack felt a strange pride. He had gone from arrogance to humility, from attempting to dominate to learning how to contribute meaningfully. For the first time, he truly understood what it meant to respect someone's abilities, and in turn, to value collaboration over ego. That evening, after the battle had ended and the colony was secure, Jack followed Lyra to a secluded observation point overlooking the canyon. The stars stretched endlessly above them, and the silence was filled with a calm sense of accomplishment. "You know," Jack said quietly, "I came here thinking I could control everything. I thought I was clever enough to dominate a woman who seemed, well, untouchable. But I was wrong. You're more than I imagined." Lyra turned to him, her eyes reflecting the starlight. "There is more to me than you realize," she said. "You have seen some of my skills, my planning, and my leadership. But my identity, my purpose, is something you have yet to understand fully. That will come in time." Jack's curiosity flared. "What do you mean?" Lyra hesitated for the first time, a subtle shift in her calm demeanor. "I am not just a leader of this colony. I have responsibilities far beyond it. The truth about who I am may shock you, but it is necessary for you to know if you are to continue standing by my side." The next morning, she led Jack to a secure communications hub beneath the colony. Here, she accessed encrypted files and holographic displays. Jack watched as images, maps, and data streamed before him. Lyra's hands moved over the controls with effortless precision, bringing up information he could barely comprehend. "You see," she began, "I am an envoy from the Interstellar Federation. My mission is to monitor human colonies, assess potential threats, and ensure the balance of power in this sector. This colony is under observation because of its strategic location and resources. My presence here is covert, but critical." Jack staggered back slightly. He had known she was skilled, intelligent, and mysterious, but an envoy from a powerful interstellar organization? That was beyond anything he could have imagined. "You're part of a galactic government? That explains a lot," he said, struggling to process the information. Lyra nodded. "Yes. And now you understand why domination was never an option. Your skills, your courage, and your ingenuity are valuable, but in the wrong hands, or without understanding, you could have endangered yourself and the colony. I am not someone to be controlled. I am someone whose mission is far larger than personal power." Jack felt a wave of humility. He had come to the colony with arrogance, thinking he could bend a powerful woman to his will. Now, he realized that the scale of what he had underestimated was immense. He also felt a surge of determination if he was going to survive here. If he was going to be useful, he had to rise to a level of understanding, skill, and trust that he had never reached before. Lyra continued, showing him strategic maps, fleet movements, and the likely approach of rogue mercenaries. Jack absorbed the information, asking questions and learning quickly. He realized that while Lyra was extraordinary, humanity had unique strengths that she valued: creativity, adaptability, and unpredictability. Together, they could be a force far stronger than either could achieve alone. As they finalized plans for the next phase of defense, Jack felt a new sense of purpose. He was no longer here to dominate, to assert ego, or to prove himself over someone else. He was here to learn, to contribute, and to survive alongside a being whose skills and intelligence challenged everything he thought he knew about leadership and power. The day ended with Jack and Lyra standing on the ridge again, looking out over the colony. Jack understood now that the true challenge had only just begun. There would be more threats, more tests, and more moments where human skill and alien brilliance would have to work together. But he also knew that he was ready to rise to the occasion, not as a master, but as a partner, an ally, and someone willing to match her intelligence with his courage. For the first time, Jack felt he was part of something far greater than himself, a challenge that would test every skill he had, every instinct, and every ounce of human ingenuity. And he knew, without doubt, that Lyra was more than he had ever expected, and that the future of the colony and perhaps humanity depended on their combined strength. The sun rose over the rugged canyon, painting the colony in shades of orange and gold. The morning air was tense, carrying the quiet hum of machinery and the anxious whispers of settlers. Jack stood beside Lyra at the edge of the ridge, overlooking the colony. Today would be the ultimate test. The rogue mercenary fleet was returning, larger and more aggressive than before. Jack adjusted his gear, checking the equipment he had helped prepare. He felt a mixture of fear, anticipation, and determination. The events of the past weeks had changed him. He no longer sought dominance. Instead, he sought to protect, to contribute, and to prove that humanity's courage and adaptability could match even the most advanced alien strategies. Lyra turned to him, her expression calm but serious. Today, everything we have prepared will be tested. Your skills, your instincts, and your creativity are critical. Remember, this is not about force alone. It is about coordination, timing, and using every advantage we have. Jack nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility. He had spent time learning from her, understanding the colony, and preparing for moments like this. He knew that human unpredictability, something Lyra could not anticipate fully, might be the edge they needed. The first sign of the fleet appeared as distant specks glinting in the sky. The rogue mercenaries had learned from their previous defeat, and they were cautious, but relentless. Jack watched as they descended, weapons ready and engines roaring. The settlers braced themselves, trusting in Lyra's guidance. Lyra moved quickly, issuing orders with precision. Automated drones took defensive positions. Heavy machinery was positioned to create obstacles, and traps were set along likely paths of advance. Jack worked alongside her, placing barricades, adjusting machinery, and monitoring the terrain for unexpected threats. Every decision had to be exact. Mistakes could be fatal. The first wave of attackers struck with speed and aggression. Jack's heart pounded as he fired his own weapon, covering workers and helping redirect machinery to block enemy paths. The combination of Lyra's precise strategy and Jack's quick improvisation created an effective defense. The mercenaries were taken by surprise, encountering obstacles and resistance at every turn. One group of attackers attempted to bypass the main defenses by scaling a side canyon. Jack noticed the movement and immediately shouted a warning. Lyra acted instantly, directing drones and settlers to intercept the flanking maneuver. Jack's input, unpredictable and instinctive, disrupted the mercenaries' plan just long enough for the colony to counterattack effectively. Hours passed in tense combat. The colony was battered, but its defenses held. Settlers followed Lyra's orders with remarkable discipline, executing complex maneuvers without hesitation. Jack marveled at their coordination and dedication, realizing that human determination, combined with her leadership, created a force that the mercenaries could not overcome. During a brief lull in the fighting, a larger mercenary ship descended toward the colony's central hub. It was heavily armored and clearly designed to destroy infrastructure. Lyra assessed the threat quickly and turned to Jack. "We cannot let that ship land. We need someone to distract it. Give us a chance to disable its weapons." "You can do this, Jack. Your creativity and courage are essential." Jack's pulse quickened. He knew this was dangerous, but he also knew he was ready. Using a modified transport vehicle as a decoy, he drove toward the ship, drawing its attention. The mercenaries opened fire, but Jack used every trick he had learned: speed, unpredictability, and careful maneuvering to evade destruction while keeping the ship focused on him. From the ridge, Lyra coordinated the colony's forces. Drones fired precise shots at critical points. Machinery disrupted the landing gear, and settlers used improvised weapons to weaken the mercenary ship. Jack's risky distraction gave them the edge they needed. With one final coordinated strike, the ship was disabled, crashing harmlessly outside the colony's perimeter. The remaining mercenaries began to retreat, their morale shattered. The colony had survived, not just through Lyra's brilliance, but through the combined efforts of humans and alien technology. Jack felt a surge of pride not in dominating anyone, but in contributing to something far greater than himself. As the dust settled, the settlers gathered to assess the damage. Machines were repaired, supplies reorganized, and morale lifted. Jack walked among them, seeing the relief and gratitude on their faces. For the first time, he felt like a true part of the community, valued not for ego or strength, but for courage, creativity, and cooperation. Lyra approached him, her calm presence grounding him after the chaos. "You did well today, Jack," she said quietly. "Your contribution made a real difference. You used human unpredictability in ways I could not have anticipated, and that helped save this colony." Jack smiled, feeling a mixture of exhaustion and satisfaction. "I've learned a lot," he admitted. "Not just about surviving, but about leadership, about strategy, and about working together. I came here thinking I could control everything. I was wrong. There's more to strength than I ever realized." Lyra studied him for a moment, her expression unreadable but approving. "Exactly. Strength is not about dominance or fear. It is about understanding, adaptability, and knowing when to act. Humans have courage and ingenuity that can turn the tide, even against overwhelming odds. Today, you proved that." Jack felt a new sense of purpose. He had started this journey seeking control over an alien woman, thinking it would elevate him. Instead, he had discovered the value of respect, cooperation, and trust. Lyra had challenged him, taught him, and now, together, they had protected the colony from a threat far greater than he could have faced alone. Over the next few days, the colony began to rebuild. Machinery was repaired, structures reinforced, and morale strengthened. Jack worked tirelessly alongside the settlers and Lyra, applying the lessons he had learned. He realized that human ingenuity and courage could complement alien intelligence, creating a partnership that was greater than the sum of its parts. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the canyon in deep shades of purple and gold, Jack and Lyra stood on a ridge overlooking the colony. The settlers moved about below, busy with repairs and daily tasks, yet their faces reflected relief and quiet pride. "You know," Jack said softly, "I came here expecting to dominate, to take control. I thought that was what made someone strong. But I see now that real strength comes from understanding, respect, and working together. I never imagined I could learn so much from someone, or something like you." Lyra's eyes reflected the last light of the sun. "You have learned quickly, Jack. Humanity has qualities I respect: creativity, courage, and adaptability. Combined with careful planning and strategy, these qualities make a force capable of facing challenges I have never encountered before." Jack smiled, feeling a sense of humility and accomplishment. He had started as a man seeking power over another, but he had become a protector, a contributor, and a partner. He realized that Lyra's true strength was not just in her intelligence or leadership, but in her ability to inspire others to rise to their potential. In the days that followed, the colony thrived. The settlers rebuilt, fortified, and prepared for future challenges. Jack continued to work alongside Lyra, learning from her and applying his own skills in new ways. The partnership between human ingenuity and alien brilliance became a symbol of hope and resilience. Jack no longer thought about domination. He thought about trust, collaboration, and the strength that came from working together. Lyra had taught him that ego and force were not the measures of power. Wisdom, adaptability, and courage were. One night, as they watched the stars stretch endlessly above the canyon, Jack realized that this experience had changed him forever. He had entered the colony as a man seeking control, only to discover that real leadership and strength were about contribution, respect, and the ability to rise above personal ambition for the greater good. Lyra stood beside him, calm and steady, her eyes reflecting the starlight. "The galaxy is full of challenges," she said quietly, "but together, humans and aliens can face them. Your courage and ingenuity have proven that humanity can rise to meet even the most extraordinary obstacles." Jack nodded, feeling a deep sense of purpose and belonging. He had learned the hard way that domination was meaningless against someone truly extraordinary. Respect, cooperation, and courage were far more powerful. And with Lyra by his side, he knew that humanity could achieve greatness beyond what he had ever imagined. As the stars twinkled overhead, the colony below continued its quiet recovery. Jack felt a sense of peace. knowing that he had become part of something larger than himself. He had faced his own arrogance, learned from someone greater, and discovered the true meaning of strength. And he knew, without doubt, that humanity's potential had just begun to shine in a universe full of endless challenges.